Good evening. Weekdays, I try to be a pastoral judge. Weekends, he said I was joking about being a judgmental pastor. So I decided that's not too good. I better be a judicious pastor instead, not to be a judgmental pastor. This is my second trip to the Philippines. I've been to Davao on my first trip for a mission trip. And I must tell you, it was an amazing trip for me in Davao. This was some 3-4 years ago. So in Davao, we were there for a mission trip, and at one point of our trip, we were serving at the police academy. We went to the police academy to conduct some sessions. And at the police academy, as we were driving into the police academy, I heard something I didn't believe I would hear in the police academy. People were jumping up and down singing, "One way, Jesus is the only one that I can lean on." I can count on. One way, Jesus. In Singapore, something like that will never happen. In a police academy, people jumping up and down, declaring their faith in Jesus. Singapore is a very different society, very multicultural. So something like this will be quite frowned upon in an organization like the police academy. But we were so thrilled. I was so thrilled to see that happening in the police academy. And then in the police academy, I was speaking to them on Micah 6:8. What it means to serve, to love justice, delight in justice, do justice, love kindness, and to walk humbly before your God. And also wonderful to hear how the message resonated with the police officers to be doing justice, loving kindness, walking humbly before our God. It's a real privilege for us to be here. We're so thankful for the privilege, the hospitality that we've been receiving over the past few days. It's been wonderful. I love the Philippines. I love the Philippine people. You guys have been wonderful to be amongst. Just love to be amongst you. Elder Andrew has asked us to share concerning fatherhood and discipleship of the family in this church camp. So Pastor Kirk last night talked about ourselves and our fathers, our earthly fathers, and also ourselves and our heavenly Father. This evening, I'm going to talk about ourselves as fathers and as parents to our children. So parenting, fatherhood downwards, if you like. Last night was parenting fatherhood upwards. The generation before, as well as our heavenly Father. This evening is on downwards to the next generation. Fathers and parents. Now, this may not be directly relevant to some of us. Maybe for some of us, our children have grown up already. This may not seem all that relevant. Or maybe for some of us, we are singles. How many singles here? Singles. Okay, some of us are singles. It may not be directly relevant to you as yet. But those of us who are singles may one day not be singles anymore, right? Those of you who are singles may one day have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 children. Yes? That seems to be the score in Philippines. Almost every other person has 3 children, 4 children. So those of you who lifted up your hands just now as singles, maybe you're going to grow up to have 5 children, 6 children. So what you hear this evening may still be relevant for you. I believe will still be relevant for you in time to come. In any event, even if it's not relevant for you as yet, hearing this will help you to understand how to pray for parents amongst you, for families amongst you. Those of us who have children who are more grown up will hear this and want and know how and see better how to pray for young families that are around you. We were singing the song just now, Good Good Father. Good Good Father. And just now as Daniel was introducing whatever titles I may hold. And as you sing the song Good Good Father, the thought that came to me was this. I will exchange all of the titles I've ever received, any title I can ever dream of receiving, for my children to say, I'm a good, good father. Any title. Any title I can think of this evening. I'll much rather hear my children say to me, I'm a good, good father. That would mean so much more to me. I hope to my children, let me tell you about my children. My children are already quite grown. This is my family. This was taken some 2 years ago. Most of you may be wondering, okay, what place is this? You're asking the person beside you now. What is this place? Anybody has any guesses? Any ideas? What's that? Philippines. Anybody says Philippines? Surely none of you have seen all of the Philippines, so this may well be Philippines. You see this here? Oops, sorry. You see this here? It's like a amphitheater. Any amphitheaters in Philippines? Grecian amphitheaters. Okay, this was in Turkey about 2 years ago. So this is my family in Turkey. This was winter time. And here's Carissa. This Carissa, my 23-year-old, she's graduating from college in her final year now, 4th year. So she's going to go on to do a master's in clinical psychology after this. That's Carissa, and that is Brian. Brian is 21. He's finished his national service in the army in Singapore. Oh, he was how does he look? Does he look fit? Not bad, but he was a commando in the national service. As a commando, it's crazy, it's amazing, you know. He carries a 30 kg load on him. They walk up and down hills and mountains on 10 kilometers, 18 kilometers like nothing. Scary. But that's it, that's my boy. That's Brian, he's in 1st year in university now. And both of them worship in the same church as us. Brian serves in the something like a Sunday school. He looks after primary sixes in the church. Carissa is more involved in the university campus ministry in the hostel where she stays. Both of them, as was read just now, have a concern for marginalized, for weaker, for those who are weaker, for children. They volunteer in the Singapore Cancer Society in Singapore to talk to families whose children are undergoing cancer treatment. So they volunteer themselves. Brian volunteers in schools as well to look after those who are academically challenged. We're so grateful to see them grow up this way. We don't know what extent we may have been able to influence them. We may not have been able to influence them all that much, but we're just so thankful for how God has molded them, given them a heart for the marginalized. We're so grateful for that. So that's my family. And this evening, I'm going to talk about 3 aspects of family discipleship. There's so much to talk about in family discipleship, isn't there? So much that we can think of. So this half an hour, 45 minutes that we may have together, I'm going to talk about 3 aspects of family discipleship. Let's turn to the first one now. And I'd like you to turn your Bibles to Exodus 18. Do that for me, will you? Open up your Bibles, turn to or turn on your devices to Exodus 18. I'd like you to take a moment to glance through Exodus 18 and see what Exodus 18 is all about. Okay, once you have an idea what Exodus 18 is about, share with the person beside you. In a few words, what is Exodus 18 about? Tell the person beside you. Okay, let's hear some answers from various ones of you. Brother in red over there. Yes. What is Exodus 18 about? Yes. Holding your glasses. In just 2 or 3 words, what is Exodus 18 about?
It's about Jethro.
About Jethro. Wonderful, very good. Okay, someone else. Brother in yellow, Santa Barbara. Sorry, I don't know your name. That's the only way to identify you. Jethro visits Moses. Yes, that's right. In fact, most Bible translations, the title that's given to this topic, this chapter, may well be something like this. In the ESV, it says Jethro's advice. Any one of us have the ESV? Yeah, it says Jethro's advice. Anyone has the NAS, New American Standard Bible? None, not so many of us, none of us. Okay, it says Jethro counsels Moses. NIV. What does NIV say? The title. Jethro visits Moses. So now, why is the chapter entitled this way? The entire chapter seems to focus on how Moses welcomed Jethro. The last time Moses saw Jethro may have been several weeks ago, most people believe. In the course of this week, so much has happened. The Lord has delivered Israel from Egypt. So much has happened. All the plagues, crossing of the Red Sea, so much has happened. And this chapter seems to focus on Moses receiving Jethro and Jethro's advice. One thing seems to be missing from this chapter. What is it? One thing seems to be strikingly missing. Now, Jethro, when he came to visit them, who did he visit them together with? Look at verse 2. Who did he visit Moses with? Anybody? Moses' wife and his 2 children. Now, isn't that surprising? Jethro brought with him Moses' wife and 2 children, and in the entire chapter, Moses' attention seemed to be on Jethro. It seemed to be all about Jethro. No mention about Moses being overjoyed to see his wife and his children. No mention about him telling his children all the wonderful things that God has done for them. That seems surprising, doesn't it? In fact, the very next day, Moses was there judging cases from the morning to the end. It's tough life being a judge. So he was there hearing cases, hearing disputes between the people right from the morning, beginning of the day, until the end of the day. Until Jethro had to tell him, what you're doing is not right. You will wear yourself out. And hence, Jethro gave him the advice that he gave, which most of us think of as delegation. The advice that Jethro gave to him. Now, what was Jethro's underlying concern? A Jewish commentator, in fact, suggested that Jethro's underlying concern seemed to be, hey, I brought with me your wife, your children, and the whole day you seem to be focused on your work, your disputes, your judging of cases. What about your children? Don't you need to give some attention to your children? And if you do, this is what you need to do. If you want to give some attention to your children, this is what you need to do. Delegate some of the work, appoint other people so that you can focus on your family as well. Look after your family as well. You haven't seen your family for a good few weeks. You're just going to leave them alone like this? At least someone has suggested that seems to be Jethro's underlying concern behind his advice to Moses. Roles of a father, roles of a parent may seem to have been a little neglected here, at least in this passage. Now, I would suggest to you that there are 4 relational roles of a parent. 4 relational roles. I call them relational roles because there are some roles which may not be that relational. So, for example, I provide for my children, and I'm happy to provide for my children. I'm a provider of my children, but that's not exactly a relational role to my mind. I see myself as an intercessor for my children. I pray for my children. But that's not exactly a relational role between me and my children. It's more a relational role between me and my God for my children. So what are these relational roles of a parent? First, relational role. A caregiver. Especially when the children are young, looking after the child has so much to do with caregiving. Isn't it? Especially when children are young, it's about bathing them, changing the diapers, feeding them, those kind of things. A caregiving role. Now, fathers may tend to shy away from this kind of roles, at least in Singapore. I'm not sure about here. Fathers seem to think this is mother's role, this is nanny's role. Maybe if there's a grandmother, this is grandmother's role. Not so much the father's role, at least in Singapore. But I would say, fathers, this is as much your role as it is the mother's. It's been said that the first 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes of a young child's life are very important. And fathers especially need to be present at those moments. I took it about my first child, my first daughter, Teresa, when she was very young. She had a hard time falling asleep. My second child was completely different. You put him on bed at night and off he goes. He falls asleep. My older one, Teresa, had a tough time going to sleep. So I would be there with her every night. Sitting down with her, I just sit down beside the cot and pet her and wait for her to go to sleep. Sometimes it will take a long time. Sometimes it seems like she's fallen asleep already, so I sneak off. But then she cries after that when she sees that I'm not there. So I have to go back there and continue to pet her again. It seems like not doing very much. But times like this can be very, very bonding for the child, between the father and the child. Even simple things like putting her to bed. And when I recall times when in the middle of the night when she woke up, and when I tried to comfort her. That happened for quite a number of times, such that even when she was a schoolgirl, when she had nightmares, she would come to me and ask me to pray for her. It's very bonding, being involved in the caregiving role. That's the first role of a parent, the caregiving aspect of it. Quite apart from it being very bonding, I think it's also potentially very impactful. Very impactful. Why? I recall this instance where I was supervising Teresa when she was brushing her teeth. She was very young then, maybe about two and a half, brushing her teeth in the bathroom. So she was holding on to a cup as she brushed her teeth. And somehow, as she was doing so, brush, the cup fell off her tiny little hand. And of all places that the cup must fall into, it fell right into the toilet. Rats. What am I to do? It fell into the toilet. She has never seen anything fall into the toilet bowl. I mean, except what is supposed to fall inside there. So she didn't know what she was supposed to do. I had to deal with it, of course. Now, there are two ways, right? One, try to flush it down. It has nothing to do with the cup anymore. The other, pick it up. Now, the cup was too large to be flushed down, so it seemed like only the other option was available to me. Pick it up. Fortunately, the toilet was quite clean. Fortunately, the liquid in there was colorless and very clear. So that made my job a bit easier. So I picked it up. Now, after you pick it up, what do you do with it? Wash. Throw away. How many will wash? Some of you, okay, at least some of you will wash. Well, I don't know why, but I did that. I washed. So I washed it. I tell you, after I washed it, I swear it was cleaner than before it fell inside. I washed it, I scrubbed it so thoroughly. Cleaner, guaranteed cleaner than before it fell inside. Now that it's cleaner than before it fell inside, what do I do with it? Yeah, continue brushing your teeth. Go on. One joker in some meeting that I shared this story with told me, yeah, give it to somebody else. I love that. It's cleaner than before it fell inside. What do you do with this cup? See, a certain stigma attaches to the cup, right? When it's ever fallen inside. And there's something about this stigma. It's eternal. Right through the years, decades after that, I look at the cup, I will still remember the incident. This cup is no longer a cup, it's a tainted cup. It's a stigmatic cup. And really for no good reason at all, right? Surely it's much cleaner now than before it fell inside. It's not only eternal, it's also irrational. It speaks to me of how when God cleanses us of our sins, He doesn't just wipe us clean. He wipes us clean of the stigma of sin as well. And this is a story that I tell when I speak at conferences, at judicial conferences, legal conferences, when I speak of restorative justice, when I speak of what it means to restore those who have been offenders in the past. The society will always look at them differently. This is someone who has fallen into a toilet. Eternal, irrational. But are there ways of getting rid of that stigma so that this person may walk and live again? Free this person of the stigma. All this came through a simple act of supervising my daughter when she was brushing her teeth. Caregiving role. Many amazing things can happen. Many very bonding things can happen. Even through something as simple as that. Supervising my daughter when she's brushing her teeth. So that's the first role. Caregiving. Second role, being an educator of the children. Second relational role, being an educator. Now, being an educator doesn't just mean over academics, over academic matters. It means over life. Over issues of life, over matters concerning life. And it can happen anytime, anywhere. When you catch a child at a teachable moment, some things get assimilated, get learned more effectively than if they were not in a teachable moment. Than if I were merely trying to download things on them. And to catch them at a teachable moment, I got to be present enough with the child so as to be able to catch those teachable moments. Teachable moments doesn't come like, school starts, therefore the teachable moment. It doesn't happen that way. Life doesn't take place that way, does it? Recently, Pastor Keng and I, we were installed as pastors last year in April. And at the installation, they played a video. This was a pre-recording of my children talking about me. So they played that in the installation. I never seen that until the installation. So they pre-recorded my children and they asked my children to talk about me. What are some memories they have of me as they were growing up? What was I like as a father? Boy, I got to brace myself for this. I didn't know what they were going to say. So Carissa was asked, what are your memories? Tell us one incident. And she talked about this incident where, she was quite young then. In fact, I don't even remember the incidents. They remembered it. She was in primary school then, and she wanted to go for a sleepover somewhere else. And she came to me and she asked me. She must have asked in a rather somewhat demanding way. So I asked her, what if I were to say no? What if I were to say no? And she paused there, because she knew what this was leading to. She knew what this was all about. My question, and I continued, is it okay with you if I were to say no? If it's not okay with you, you are demanding, you're not requesting. Are you demanding or are you requesting? I taught them from long before. If you demand for things, the answer will always be no. They knew it. So every time they request for something, they must always say, Daddy, please. This is how I taught them. You must always start with those two words. No children, left to them. What would they say? The first two words will be, I want. At least my children. I'm not sure about yours. First two things will be, I want this, I want that, I want this. No. If it's I want, the answer is always no, regardless of what you're wanting. Daddy, please. First two words. Then we can think about it. This is how I taught them. So she knew where I was going with this. When I told her, are you requesting or are you demanding? And she had to quieten down, soften down and say, okay, I'm requesting. And if you say no, it's okay with me. When she said that, what happens to the daddy's heart? Okay, fine. Of course, the dad softens, right? And I was quite prepared to say yes. I mean, it was at a cost to me. I got to fetch her there, fetch her back, and so on. But what was important to me was the attitude. And that's what she recalled. Teachable moment. It comes as we play the role of an educator in sometimes the most unexpected moments. I know I would never have expected her to come with that request or that demand. Most unexpected moments, something like this pops up, and it becomes a teachable moment. My son, when it was his turn, he shared about this. As a kid, we had this kind of like point system. So when he does certain things, he does some chores, or he scores, he does well in his term test or something, he gets certain points. And the points are convertible into things. Okay. So he has that. So one day at a toy shop, he saw a toy and he said, Daddy please, Daddy please, can I have this toy? So he fully expected it to come out of his points. Then I told him, he asked me, how many points would this be? All this depends on the cost, right? So cost and points correlate. So I told him, this one, no need points. And he was quite surprised. Why? Why no need points? I told him, this is for being my son. And he said, wow, okay. He was quite young then. He said, okay, wow, good, happy, free toy, yay. But after some time, when he thought back about it, it spoke something to him. It spoke something to him. It spoke something about from his point of view, the generosity of the father, the acceptance of him as my son, how some things don't have to be earned. The father's love doesn't have to be earned. The father's acceptance doesn't have to be earned. It's given just because he is my son. Now, as a father, I need to teach them at least two things. I need to teach them not to be too entitled. Demand this, and all that. Feel entitled to this, entitled to that. Hence, we had that point system thing to motivate some kinds of good conduct. At the same time, I also need to teach them that some things they don't have to try to earn. It's theirs just because they are my son, just because they are my child. Not an easy balance to strike, but necessary to try to strike that balance. And all the things comes, it's a part of being an educator to my children at home. Educator, educator role. Next, the third role, being a disciplinarian. This is a fun bit, right? Now, in most households, at least in Singapore, I'm not sure about here once again, in most households, of the two parents, one is a soft one is a tough one. Same here? So in many Singapore households, the mother may well say, if it's a mother who is not the disciplinarian, the mother will well say, wait till your father comes home. You are going to get it when your father comes home. Any mother said this? Okay, never mind, don't need to put up your hands. Or sometimes the father, if he's there in the situation, may see a situation that calls for disciplining, but the father may turn a blind eye to it and try to continue looking at his phone and so on. Not want to play the disciplinarian role. It's important to play that role. And I suggest you use some principles in playing this disciplinarian role. Some principles. Three principles. First, be firm without being harsh, without being condemning, without being rejecting of the person. Did we get it? Firm without being condemning, rejecting, without being harsh with the person. In other words, deal with the choice, deal with the conduct, but don't diminish the person. So talk to the child and say to the child, that choice, that wasn't a very smart choice at all. Find problems with the choice, find problems with the conduct, not with the person. That's the first thing. Second thing, never discipline in anger, never discipline in annoyance. Because when we try to discipline in anger and annoyance, we always overreact. It's never balanced a response. Third thing, always restoring. Discipline always restores in the end. So for some point, at a point in time, there may be discipline being meted up, and it may be even left for a while, but at some point, the parent who executed the discipline steps in to restore the child. Not the other parent, the parent who executed the discipline does the restoring. How does he do the restoring? It can even be simple things like just going to the child to ask after the child, include the child in some things. If the parent will be playing some games with the other children, the parent who disciplines, make sure he goes to the child and involves this child. This child feels like he's once again accepted, even though he may have to be disciplined earlier for something else. So what are the three principles once again? Be firm without being harsh, rejecting or condemning. Deal with the choice of conduct, not so much diminish the person. Never discipline in anger, never discipline in annoyance, and always restoring. Discipline, but always restoring. Final role, Final relational role. Any guesses what it is? Sorry? Can't hear. Play with the child. Play with the child. Isn't that your favorite one? Well, it's my favorite one at least. I think playmate is absolutely important. And it breaks my heart when sometimes I see a parent bring the child to the playground, let's say, and the parent sits by one side, either doing his own thing, reading, looking at his phone or something, and leaves the child to play on his own. That should never be. Every time if we are bringing the child somewhere, get involved. Be there playing, running around together with the child. And I had a rule for myself. Never buy the child a toy without also playing that particular toy with the child. Never just buy a toy with the child and leave the toy with the child and yeah, here you go. No. If I'm going to buy a ball for my son, for example, I want to play that together with him. I get to play too. Yay. If I buy a doll for my daughter, well, okay, let's find a way to get involved in this. But you know the principle. The principle is this. Get involved in playing. It's so important, isn't it? For the longest time, my son, anyone heard of Game Boys? It's not so popular now, I think. It used to be popular many times, maybe a decade ago. What's a Game Boy? A small little device, you play a game on your own, right? Any boy will want that. Isn't that right? Any boy will want that. I refuse to buy that for my son. Why? Because I can't play that together with him. Okay, 2 players. Yeah, but it's too small. I ended up buying an Xbox for my son. Why Xbox? I can play too. And I think it makes all the difference when I buy him something that's more communal, something that I can be involved in together with him. My daughter can be involved in playing as well. So we spend hours racing together and having fun racing. Compared to if it were just a Game Boy, yeah, okay, maybe sometimes I can share with him, but it's too small and it's not convenient. And he ends up just being involved in it himself. That's not what I want. I want it to be something communal. I want to be involved in it together with him. And I feel this is always true. The more a parent engages with play and enjoys the children in play, the less a parent needs to engage in discipline. Anyone found that to be true? The more you engage with them in play, actually the less you need to engage them in disciplining. Why? There's a bonding. There's a certain oneness, there's a certain something effective that happens in the course of play. And you feel that you need to discipline them less. Compared to a parent who's constantly trying to curb them, constantly trying to say, no, don't do this, no, don't do that, don't do this. You have no energy left to play with them. And no energy left to enjoy them. So 4 roles, 4 relational roles of a parent. Happens on a day-to-day basis. And all of us need to be equally involved in this, whether we are the father, we are the mother. In Singapore, I notice this happening quite a bit. We go to a restaurant, even at family gatherings sometimes. What happens to the little children? They all have their own little devices, like iPads, like mobile phones, and they're constantly playing that throughout the mealtime. Does that happen here as well? It does? If I can, the moment I get back home, I will make sure I pass a law against something like this. No, it's far beyond my power, of course. Far beyond my power. But if I ever have the power to, I will do that at first instance. No devices at meal times. Amen? Yes. I think it's terrible. Young people don't agree. These people here don't agree. I think it's terrible. I think at meal times is a time to interact. Parents take it as an easy way out. They are involved in their own devices, they get to eat, fine, we get to eat as well. They take it as an easy way out. But I tell you, parents, those parents who do that will regret it in time to come. In time to come, they won't be able to get a single word out of their children, the teenagers. especially when they become teenagers, if you don't begin that interaction with them, enjoying meal times interacting with them when they're still young, once they get to primary school age or junior age, you won't know how to communicate with them. The foundations are not built. They won't even know how to enjoy communicating with their parents. And once they're teenagers, all the more forget it. All these things have to be built when they are young. Get rid of the device. Give to them device time, of course. Give to them game time. Tell them, listen, this hour, that's the time you can play, and I'll gladly play with you. But meal times, no such thing. Okay? I hope there's such a law in Philippines too. All these kind of things take time. Don't they? Take time. And on this axis, amount of time, this axis, age of family, what do you think happens? How does the graph go? It goes this way, I believe. The younger the family, the younger the children, the more time is needed. Gradually it goes down. So my kids are now 23, 21, I guess I'm somewhere around here. Some of you may have children aged maybe about 1, 3, you are really somewhere around here. It does take time. And I would say, give the time. Give the time. Your children, your family is as much your ministry as your church responsibilities. Perhaps even more. God holds you accountable for your family. And you need to give time for it. Especially when the children are young. And this is where I need to say two things to two groups of people. For those of us who are parents of young families, are there any parents of young families here? I don't seem to see that many around. Okay, some of us. Okay. I say to you, make time for your families. Make time for your families. There was some time ago, we were selling off our home, and there was a last day when I would finally leave, pack up everything, and lock up that home for the last time. Before doing that, I went from room to room, recapturing some precious memories from each place, and giving thanks to the Lord for different things that happen in different places, and also confessing sins, confessing things that shouldn't have happened but happened in various places. And as I locked up the door that last time, I walked out. I knew I would never see the inside of that place once again. And even if I do see the inside of the place once again, it will be completely different. Renovated by new owners already. It's going to look completely different. So I knew I was looking at my home for the very last time. Not many of us have the privilege of knowing that we are doing something for the last time. Not many of us know that. When was the last time I carried my children? Ever my children are 23, 21. What do I miss most about parenting? The one thing I miss the most about parenting is simply carrying them. Being able to carry them. At one time I was able to carry both of them, one in each arm. I prided myself in being able to do that. Now I can't even carry one of them. And I know I never will be able to again. One thing I miss is as simple as carrying them. And I never knew when it was that was the last time I carried them. If I knew that was the last time, what would I have done? I would have savored it more. Pressed them to myself more closely. Maybe if I knew that was the last time, I'll make sure there will be another last time the next day. But sure enough, there would be a last time, right? There would be. Feeding your kids, bathing your kids, changing their diapers. For those of you as young parents, you think it's for eternity, you can't wait for them to grow up. But believe you me, there will be a last time. Carrying them, something as simple as carrying them. There will be a last time. Many Singaporean families, but they're constantly complaining about, how I have to ferry my kids from here to this place and to that place, and all my time is spent doing that. My friends, there will be a last time. While it's still happening, cherish it, enjoy it, don't complain about it. Because that complaining spirit will be felt by our kids. How do our kids feel if you're complaining about having to take them everywhere? Does it cause them to feel more loved, more valued, more cherished? How much better if we know in our hearts there will be a last time. And because there will be a last time, now when I still get to do this for my children, I want to. Not that I have to, I get to do this for my children. So those of you with younger children, hug them closely. Because one day, you're looking around for other people's babies to carry. Like I was during this camp. I managed to carry somebody's baby. and Beth helped me to take a picture. It was a lovely picture. These are the little kicks that I get, carrying other people's babies while I wait for my own grandchildren. So parents of young families, give of yourself to your children. You are a minister to them. And you are irreplaceable. Mind you, you are irreplaceable. I deal with parents who, I deal with youthful offenders sometimes in court. There was a period of time I sat in the youth court in Singapore. I was dealing with youthful offenders. And these youthful offenders may be 13, 14, 15. They're running wild. And when you look at the family history, you understand why they're running wild. Their mothers may be into their third marriage. Their fathers were nowhere to be found the moment they were born. So they were running wild since they were born. And there are times I have to tell these mothers, you have so many children, 7, 8 children. He only has one mother. Are you going to vanish and not care for him? Who is going to replace you as a mother for him? To you, in your eyes, he is replaceable because you have so many other children. In his eyes, you as a mother, you are not replaceable. I have to tell these ladies that in the course of my work. And hope that as I tell this to them authoritatively, they will wake up and see. Someone needs to tell them that. And we have to see that at home, we are not replaceable. In so many other roles, we're never indispensable in so many other roles. Go for the things that you are not replaceable. At home to your children, you are not replaceable. Go for that. Parents of older families, what might I say to these parents? Older families. And I want to say something especially for those of us who are older, and when we were younger, we didn't get to spend enough time with our children. As a result, our children may not be very close to us right now. I know it's tough, it's hard to turn the clock back. And things like this don't necessarily give us second chances. It's tough. I feel for those parents. I feel for parents who neglected their children earlier, and now the children are running wild, and there's nothing much they can do. They try to discipline the children don't listen to them anymore. Why? Because there's no bonding in the early years. And what I do is I encourage those parents, keep on trying. Keep on trying. Don't come down too hard on your children. Your sincerity will show. Don't give up too easily. Sooner or later, your children will see the sincerity. Don't give up too easily. And for Christians, such as in a group like this, one thing that you can really be doing is be your child's intercessor. Pray for your children constantly. Who is praying for your child? If there's anyone in the world who might be praying for your child, let it be you. Set aside time to pray for them. Pray until you know God has heard your prayers. Do whatever it takes to pray for them, to seek God's hand in their lives. And I can imagine how painful it is for some. You are in church, you're serving in church, but your child may not even be in church. Your child has denied the faith. You know how painful it is for a parent. And what more can you do except to continue to be available to the child and to go on your knees constantly to pray for your child. And that's what you have to do. Keep on doing this. And wait and see God act for you. Okay, so what is the first critical aspect of family discipleship? So far, I've only talked about the first aspect. First critical aspect of family discipleship is this: spend huge amounts of time with your children, with your family, engaging in the 4 roles. Let's now move on to the second critical aspect. I think the others will take less time. Second one. Look at this verse, Genesis 18:19. Read it and see what it says. I have chosen him, Abraham, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. Notice this first word here. What is Abraham supposed to do? He is to command his children. Does the verse say he is to suggest to the children? Does the verse say he is to try to persuade the children? Does the verse say he's trying to cajole the children, badger the children? No. Command the children. It seems to suggest a certain place of authority, a certain place of headship upon the father, upon the parents as well. What they are supposed to do. And this is something very important. It speaks about exercise to a authority to be exercised, and it's something very important is tagged to it. Something as important as the Lord's promises for Abraham. What did the Lord promise Abraham? The Lord promised Abraham his descendants shall be like the stars in the sky, and all nations will be blessed through Abraham. And those promises would hang on one thing. What is that one thing? Command the children to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to him, Abraham, what he has promised. Can you see how important that is? So much hangs on we, as a parent, as a father, requiring of our children to walk after the ways of the Lord. So important. Let's look at the next verse. Deuteronomy 6:6-18. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. What is the parent supposed to do? First thing, teach the children diligently. Teach the children diligently. Now we know that the Old Testament is written in Hebrew. And the Hebrew word behind this teaching the children diligently has to do with this sharpening. Sharpening. Now how do you sharpen a blade? You got to stroke it against a whetstone. Do you stroke it only once? No, right? You have to stroke it repeatedly. Then it sharpens. And this is the idea behind teaching your children diligently. You have to keep at it. You have to keep stroking the blade against the whetstone repeatedly. Hence carrying the idea of diligence in this task. That's what is needed. Sharpening is like a blade. It's sharpened through repeatedly stroking against the whetstone. And that's how diligence is to be exercised. Second thing the parents need to do is to talk about these commands. When is the parent supposed to talk about these commands? When you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. What does that mean? All the time. Now what it means is really to embed it into your daily life. Make it part of your daily living. Make it as natural as when you sit down, as you walk, as you lie down, as you rise. Embed it into your life, into your family life. Make it natural. How do we do this? Let me suggest some ways. Find a regular time. Make it something regular, not sporadic. So for example, once a week and every Tuesday, every Thursday for example. Set aside time so your children know to expect it. Maybe every Sunday night, your children know to expect something like this. On that day, this will happen. Family devotions will occur. Make it regular. Make it relational. Relational. Not just a program, not just something to be done over and get it over and done with. Why? Because if that's our attitude, get it over and done with, our children will sense it. And if they sense it, they won't place any importance on it as well. You have to keep it relational, involve them in it, keep it relevant, back to their age. So family devotions for someone who is for a family with young children, 2-3 years old, will be very different from a family with children who are 12, 14 years old. It's got to be relevant to them. This is one area that I was never strong in growing up. When my kids were growing up, this is one area I never was strong in. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that I had no models before me. I never grew up in a Christian family. My parents were not believers. I became a believer only when I was in about 8 years old. So I never had a model of this. But apart from that, there was a lot of inertia in me. I didn't know how to do this, how to bring this about. In fact, my family didn't even say grace together, didn't even pray together before meals until about 5 years ago, perhaps 4 or 5 years ago, rather recent. So this is what we were growing up. At one point in time, I decided I needed to do something about this. Brian was then in his secondary school years, maybe about 14 years old, 14 years old. I decided that I needed to do something about this. It's time for me to rise up and take spiritual leadership over them, to be intentional in discipling my own children. So I told Brian, I want to do some form of Bible study with you, and I want to meet you Thursday night, 10 o'clock, every Thursday night. And just share one verse with him and pray with him over that. Initially, it felt uncomfortable because we weren't used to doing this. I wasn't actively obeying as the scriptures talk about this when you rise up and all that, and when you embed it into your daily life. I wasn't doing that actively, intentionally enough. So at the start, it was quite difficult. It was uncomfortable. It was something I had to keep going in. So at one point in time, I was doing within the life of David. So every Thursday, we'll do one aspect of the life of David. Read the passage. I'll share with him some thoughts from it, and hear him over what he has to say about it, and pray for him. My hands on him and pray for him over that. Maybe just about 10 minutes each time. And that's as much as I was able to do that until he finished, he went for national service. So from about 14 until he was about 17. I started late. And I regret not having done that when they were much younger. How do we do this? For those of you who have families, you have your own children, do this as soon as possible. Be very intentional about this, as early in their life as possible. But bear in mind, in this verse, one thing in particular is critical. Even before we try to teach our children diligently, even before we talk about these things, there's one thing that must happen. And what is that one thing? Look at the verse. What does it say? This words I command you today shall be on your heart. Even before we think about trying to disciple our children, trying to do devotions with our children, let's make sure first these things are in our hearts. They are directing me. They are my internal compass. They are very clearly what I identify myself with. There are clear convictions in my life. Otherwise, the children will see through my duplicity. I say one thing and I live another way. I talk about forgiveness, and then at the next breath, after that, I'm complaining about some other relative, and I'm totally bitter over that and not exercising forgiveness. Now, it's one thing to be struggling, and that may well be fine. I may be struggling to forgive somebody, and I'm honest with my children. Yeah, I know I need to forgive. Right now, I'm struggling. I want to. Pray for me. That's honest, and that's perfectly fine. But it's another thing to teach your children forgiveness, tell them forgive, and then on the next breath they go, this other person, I have plenty of things to say about this other person, complain about the person. Totally different thing altogether. Our children will see right through that kind of duplicity. And what will they do? They'll reject everything we tell them. Forgiveness and even other things that we try to teach them. Very hard to communicate to them spiritual truths when we do that. So bear in mind, these things need to be on our hearts, first of all. So, what's the second point? Second critical aspect of family discipleship: exercise spiritual leadership and practice intentional discipleship. Okay, so what have we got so far? First point, spend huge amounts of your time with your children, with your family, engaging in the 4 roles. What are the 4 roles once again? Caregiving. Okay, tell it to your neighbor, tell the person beside you. What are the 4 roles? Okay, have you got them all? Caregiver, educator, disciplinarian, and yay, playmate, the one I like the most. A child in need. Okay, second one, exercise spiritual leadership over our families, practice intentional discipleship. Now the third one, third critical aspect of family discipleship is one where, looking back in my own life, I feel I've failed the most in. Honor the most important relationship in the family. And what is the most important relationship in the family? It's not the relationship between the parent and the child. The most important human relationship in the family is between husband and wife, between the spouses. That's the most important relationship. We talk about trying to disciple your own families, trying to influence your children. The place to start, the most important place is honor the most important human relationship in the family. This was something that, as I said, I didn't do well in. Between Karen and I, for many years we had disagreement over a particular issue, and as a result of that disagreement, I was very judgmental towards her. I formed a very judgmental spirit towards her. This has got nothing to do with my job as a judge. I can be a judge but not have a judgmental spirit. I need to be a judge but not have a judgmental spirit. As a result of dealing with the issue, I grew a very judgmental attitude towards her. And that judgmental attitude pressed her down, curbed her, hindered her. I didn't intentionally try to influence the children. I didn't intentionally try to get the children on my side and criticize them. But I have absolutely no doubt my children would have been able to see it in me. I have absolutely no doubt my children may have to some extent been influenced by my critical, judgmental attitude of their mother. Recently, Pastor Keng and I, we were preaching in church over this idea, this whole topic of brokenness. Brokenness. And the other pastors were encouraging us to share a personal story on brokenness. The only thing I could think of in terms of personal story on brokenness will be my own brokenness, my own brokenheartedness over my judgmentalism of my wife. At the time, I couldn't share it because I haven't apologized to her. I haven't taken full responsibility over it before her. But I was broken-hearted over my own judgmentalism over her that caused me to fail to honor the most important relationship in the family. See, we want you to see, Pastor Keng and I, that we come and share. We come here to speak to you, not because we are perfect, we are examples in every way to follow. We come with our own sense of a negative form of thoughts of brokenness in our own lives, things that we need to deal with, things that we're still growing in. And we only hope that some of these things that we have learned will be helpful to you. But this is one thing that when I came to see this, I came to be impacted by this how judgmental my heart has become over my wife about 6 years ago. I saw that my daughter was becoming, but was taking on some of these things. I went to my daughter, I apologized to my daughter over it. I told my daughter, Karen doesn't know this, but I went to my daughter, I told my daughter, I'm sorry that I have been bearing a judgmental attitude over mom. I shouldn't be, I'm wrong. I don't want to continue. I probably may find it hard to deal with this for some time. Yeah, I may not completely switch and grow and change overnight, but that's something I want to deal with. And I need to tell my daughter that for you as well, don't have a judgmental attitude towards your own mom. I needed to take responsibility for my side. I suppose I externalized